time is it? Is it 7 o'clock yet? Oh, 7:03. Okay, let's get started. I know you're not gonna like this. Assalamu alaikum. كيف حالكم? Please make sure your phones are. Son, could you do me a favor? Could you go to the car and bring me? Here. Please make sure your phones are turned off, so it doesn't disturb the class. And if it does have on, please turn it on. What do you call it? Silent. Vibrate. Inshallah. Okay, we changed up a little bit so that we could be fair. There's this program it was a movie called Men in Black. Okay, now this is a fake movie, and it shows these guys are trying to be in this secret government group. Okay, and they're testing them, but they don't realize they're being tested. They're testing their ability to think outside of the box. Just think naturally. So they put them in a room and they tell them to fill out this form, but they don't give them a table. But there's a table sitting right there in the room. But of course it makes noise and it may sound a little, screeching to the person, offend someone's idea of what should be going on. Okay? So the one guy who's seen as a renegade, he drags the thing over there and uses it to do his thing, but it screeches on the floor. And other guys look at him like, oh man, well, you just did a rude, uncouth thing. But in actuality, he's doing what someone should do with what they have in front of them. There's no reason why we have to have the board back there and everything like that. We can turn it over here and turn it any direction that we need that better fits our needs. Okay? Allahu Akbar. So when I saw the hate mail that when I noticed the great concern for getting the board over here, of course, the objective for speaking is to be heard, right? Yeah. And the objective of teaching is to make sure the message gets there. Writing on the board, we want it to be read, right? It doesn't make sense for me to put it there and you can't read it. Half the students can't read it. Make sure the door's locked, okay? So, alhamdulillah, we can bring it here. And also it's good because it stops somebody from coming in, right? And that's an added benefit. Okay, so we're on, this name of this poem is called The 5 Rulings Plus 2. What is it called?
The 5 Rulings Plus 2.
Now we're on our third usul here. Okay, we did the introduction, and the first usul was the maqasid of the Sharia. What was the second usul focused on? The qawaid of the Sharia, right? What do we call that in English? It's important that we don't want to get into a thing again where we're using terms that we don't know what they really mean. The primary principles of fiqh. Why do we call them the primary principles of fiqh? No, that's not a good enough answer. I mean, that may be true, but that doesn't make me walk away with a meaningful understanding of why I need to know these primary principles of fiqh. Why do we call something primary school?
Because we need
So I heard a few things. Basically, it's the foundation. Foundation of what then? What are these principles the foundation of?
These are the principles all other fiqh principles are based on.
And that's why we're studying them now. And that's why we're not studying all the other fiqh principles. See, what we want to do in education is ikhtisar. We want to get, what do I need to know to get to know everything, right? Who doesn't want to know everything, right? I wish I would know everything. So we think. We think that we would want to know everything so that we can get rich, right? If I knew what was going to happen, then I could prepare myself, and so was the idea. But, that would take a lot out of life. And Allah in His wisdom knew that, so He doesn't let us know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? However, we have this desire to know. And so, if we're going to be able to use the Sharia, first of all, let's stop. What is the Sharia? If I say Sharia, what does that mean? principal laws. That's only half the answer.
Governing laws that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us to govern ourselves with.
Say again?
The governing laws that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
That's the same thing she said. What did you say?
Rules and regulations for daily living for the Muslims daily.
You're just saying the same thing she said. Let me explain why what I'm talking about. Maybe my definition will help you understand. When we're talking about the Sharia, all we're talking about is the tafseer of the Quran, the tafseer of the Hadith codified. What do I mean codified? Instead of saying Allah said, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا وَالزَّانِيَةُ وَالزَّانِيَةُ فَاجْلِدُوهُمَا, right? مِيَةَ جَلْدَةٍ. Instead of me saying that, I say zina is haram. I made it a law. Where'd I get that from? I got it from the Quran. So the Sharia is only the natija, the result of the tafsir and the understanding of the hadith. Get it? Put it in written form just as a law. So now zina is haram. The one who is a virgin, he gets 100 lashes. The one who's a non-virgin, he gets stoned. You get my point? Here is a picture of what amounts to zina. Where we get that from? From the hadith, from the Quran, from the tafsir of that. And we codified it. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about Sharia. Does everybody understand why we need a meaningful understanding of what we're talking about? So when people say, I'm anti-Sharia, and then you find Muslims say, well, I don't want the Sharia too. What are you saying? No, seriously. What are they saying? I don't want Islam to govern my life. I want to do what I want to do. And that means, and so we have to look at that, because what that means, a lot of times, those of us who've come to Islam, we have this utopian mentality towards Muslims. And we think they gotta be better than we was in Christendom, or whatever we was on, right? Yeah. So then we come and we find that there are nominal Muslims as well. It sometimes breaks our heart, because we had unrealistic expectations from our Muslim brothers and everything. We wouldn't believe that someone would actually be Muslim and not actually care. That they might as well be Christian, right? Because you ask any pimp in the street, what's his religion? Gee, got a tattoo, or Jesus and the cross on him, right? Don't make him no better individual, but so it's a nominal thing, okay? And so when we talk about coming to Islam, we're talking about allowing Allah's rule. We talk about tawakkal ala Allah, this word, tawakkal. You cannot have tawakkal unless you accept that halalun unravels with a
Positive effect.
haramun is
Harmful.
the opposite of good, corruptive, destructive.
It's never understood.
That is a foundation of I believe in the Sharia. What is it saying? I believe that everything Allah has commanded me to do in the way He told me to do it is good for me. You get my point? So in the Sharia. And everything He said is haram, is harmful for me. And I atawakkal. I trust that and depend on that. How do I show that? Through following it. You get the point, guys?
Yes.
Through doing this, because I tawakkal that this is going to bring me a positive effect. And I stay away from that knowing it's going to bring me some harm. Okay, I'm pausing because I want you guys to answer it for me. Okay, because I want to hear mistakes, I want to hear it correct, so that I confirm, you confirm, we get to know what you're saying, and you get to know what I want you to understand in that particular angle. And what from amongst your language can be the same thing, and where's the delineating line where we say, okay, well, that exceeds what we would understand, what we want to be declare as the truth. Does that make sense? And with the proof. So we have to understand when we talk about the maqasid of the Sharia, we're talking about the Sharia is just a terse, not even a terse, the product of the Quran and the Sunnah, put in codified way, in codified meaning law, description, it's a law book. So you have the name of the law, the ruling of the law, description of the law, the punishment or the prize. Just like that. And all the proofs may not be in that law book. And that used to through me when I first started studying, because we were taught, hey, you got to bring your dalil. But then we look at a fiqh book and it doesn't have all the dalil there. And so I thought that was deficient. Whoa, I'm not going to follow this. This must be where's the proof? Why didn't it give me the proof? Till we realized that that wasn't the objective of that book. That book was to teach you. You want to learn the proof? You better go memorize the Quran and memorize and read and become fluent in the Sunnah so that you can understand where this came from. And it's not that the book is deficient, that there are different angles of presentation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And if we're going to introduce it to a child, are you going to give them all those proofs at that one time? You'll never get past go. Do we make our 7-year-olds fuqaha in the whole book? No. No, it's not appropriate for age-appropriate education. It's stair-step, pedagogy, right? Yes. You begin with what is important at that particular phase in a person's life, okay? And so that's why in presenting fiqh, we have to go first grade, then outline and step up. And normally fiqh has a three phases where you know 1, 2, like we do in American law, primary, middle, or intermediate, and then what a standard is, what would be high school. You know, the general standard, what a competent adult should know. Hence our lesson today. The poem begins, this poem, the 5 legal rulings plus 2. Now that's a tricky statement because we already stated that our whole culture surrounds 5 legal rulings. Everybody's culture surrounds 5 legal rulings. Now Islam is just open with it. In other cultures, it's up to the beck and call of the people. That's what democracy is. Okay, if you remember, if anybody can remember way back in the days, a man would never kiss another man's wife. I'm talking about non-Muslims. If they met another non-Muslim, husband and wife, he would not dare go over and say, "Oh, how you doing, Miss Lady?" and kiss. Man, he might get hurt. Yeah, I'm trying to be nice. Okay? But that was literally a crime of passion going on right there. And now it's normal for people to do that. And that's what changed. Did people's, does actually the hurma, the sanctity of the woman change?
No.
No. But the people's morality and humanity changed. Okay, and some, where this thing became acceptable. That's the difference between democracy and Islam. Where the standard is Allah's standard. Allah sets the standard, not the people. So no matter what the time, the standard remains the same. It's not up for discussion. We don't have to revise. Constantly the kafir, he will not come up to us and say, I don't want you to be Muslim. But he says, we have to revise the Quran. We have to review the application of the Sharia in today's life. So it's like we'll do it one step at a time. But the Muslim should be wise and understand, isn't this the same thing that happened in the time of Nuh? That led up to Nuh? That by step, the implementation of Shaitan's rule was put forward till each generation became less and less competent adults. Now, the poem opens up. The competent adult is the conscientious one. Say that.
The competent adult is the conscientious one.
Is the conscientious one.
Is the conscientious one.
What does competent mean? Why do I hear crickets? Let me do it like this. Would you want an incompetent doctor working with you?
Competent means having ability and skill.
Okay, now we got some answers as soon as I said that. Say again, sir.
Competent means having ability and skill.
No, just having abilities. Excuse me? Say again.
Competent means having ability and skill and knowledge.
No. What's missing from that definition? Come on, lawyers.
Without error.
No, it's not without error, but reaching a standard. Okay, see what's missing from his definition is an acceptable standard of skill. Of skill. What'd you say? What was your definition? Skill and ability.
Skill and ability, yes.
Everybody has some level of skill and ability. That doesn't make everybody competent.
Correct.
There has to be a standard, an accepted standard
Trustworthy.
that is accepted as, oh no, that is acceptable. Okay? The expected standard of skill and ability. Like we said, if you wanted someone to work on your truck or your car, you want a competent mechanic. Meaning there's a certain level of expectancy that he knows everything that's going to be wrong with your truck, even if he can't fix it.
Certified and qualified.
Certified and qualified, a qualified individual, right? Who is, so the definition is here. Who is the competent adult? Now, we wouldn't want a competent, incompetent teacher teaching your children, would you? No incompetent doctors treating your illnesses, right? Well, I think it's like, I'll come back tomorrow. Let me go ask, my child. You know what I'm saying? Let me ask my wife. She's good at this. You'd be like, okay, I'm not coming back tomorrow. If I do, I'm coming with my lawyer. Right? And hopefully he's competent, right? So no matter what you want done, you want someone who has the expected standard of skill and ability. Capiche? So now, Allah wants competent adults. Does that make sense? Now, how do you know if you're a competent adult then? As a Muslim, by the Muslim standard. Not by your standard that we put for ourselves, because what happens is what could happen to us. Is the same thing that happened to the Christians. If anybody knows the story of Christendom after the advent or during the advent of Isa ibn Maryam, they did not start out as Christians. They started out as a group of Jews who were going around giving da'wah. They gave da'wah to the Greeks, and the Greeks said, well, hold on, that's too much for us right now. Right? And if anybody knows the stories, the Greeks said, we can't do all that. We're grown. We don't know that. Give us a break for a little bit. Let me get in the spirit of the message here. We don't have to apply all of this right around. And so Paul of Tarsus writes back to the elders and says, what do I do? Do I enforce all the laws on these people right away? And they sat down and said, well, what do we do here? Well, get them a little break. What was the break on? The break was on circumcision. Okay? That was the big deal. Some of these guys are old. The circumcision might kill them. Okay? So what do we just give them a break. And when they gave that fatwa to give a break, then the whole Sharia went out the window.
Then it was kosher.
Then it was like, do we have to stop eating pork? Well, it's not what fills your body that defiles you. It's what comes out your mouth. We start being slick. Semantikin, the android jinn. As my father-in-law, rahimahullah, used to say. He can speak all these different languages, and if that's not enough, I'm equipped with a fingertip laser to make you comply. That's the way it goes, right? So what happened is, what's happening to us now? Us as Muslims. We're coming into Islam making the same excuses Paul made. Okay? We don't need to learn no Arabic. I'm from Brooklyn. Oh, it's too difficult. That's a lie about Allah. Think about that. A lie about Allah. First thing Allah told you to do was read, Iqra. So if it was something too hard, he would not have done it. Because he is Al-Adil. So we tawakkal. Trust Allah and go, and you'll see it happen. Even if you can't see it. Okay? But we don't put that trust in Allah. Right? So, what is happening to us is that we've lost our competency. We haven't learned the things that we're supposed to know at this stage in our Islam. I would dare say, if we memorize just one page of Quran for every day we've been Muslim, we'd be finished the Quran. Every year we've been Muslim. How many Jews would we have? Are you telling me you can't memorize 2 pages of Quran every year? Is anybody going to dare say that? It's that hard? You didn't memorize that much songs without even trying to listen to songs. Or more than that. So, what does it mean? Part of the problem is we don't know what it means to be a competent adult as a Muslim or how to get there. Alhamdulillah, we're going to get there, inshallah. First, let's find the definition. The competent adult is the I should say the conscious one, the conscientious one. What does conscientious mean?
Thinking.
It's a type of thinking. You asking me a question or you telling me? If you know, you can't answer. See, remember, I'm teaching you guys to be lawyers. You have to speak and make it clear what you're saying. If you're asking me a question, then I'll accept the question. If you're telling me something, the tone has to be the tone of a statement. And if it's a question, there has to be the sign of a question. Does it mean thinking? Is, are. Those are things that denote a question.
The conscientious Muslim is the one who thinks.
that knows.
The one that knows. The conscientious one, the competent adult is the conscientious one. Who's the conscious one? Aware of every, of whatever. Let's look at that. He's aware of every ruling on whatever he wants means that he is going to do it. Because the rule is that you have to know what the ruling is before you do it. What if you don't know the ruling? What do, Queen and Zinga?
Well, you go to the proper source and look it up.
No, you don't look it up. You have not been told to do any research like that. What have you been told to do? Ask those who are associated with knowledge. Did it say go ask the alim? It includes the alim, but not just the alim. He said ahl al-dhikri. Ahl here means all those associated with it. In kuntum la ta'lamun. If it is that you don't know. Allah divided the people with those who know and those that don't know. And to some degree, we don't know something. You know, he has this and she has that. There's always a difference. You don't know everything. And what you've been given of knowledge is only a little bit. So you're always going to be in need of some other knowledge. So what do you do when you don't know? Allah tells us in the Quran, then go to those associated with that particular science, that knowledge, if you don't know, and ask them. That's what we're told to do. Ask, and if we did that, we wouldn't have so much problems. Now those associated could be the teacher, the Shaikh, the Ustad Mutqin, the meticulous teacher, the students, the janitor, okay? The tape man. And I told you the story about Shaykh Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti, rahimahullah, when he died. He was teaching in the Kaaba for 12 years. When he died, the person they put in place to replace him was the tape man. He wasn't even a talibul ilm at the time. But because he was assigned to tape everything this man says. Tape, yes, my accent. He was recording him. Nowadays, you got to say recording because if you say tape and somebody who's born in the 80s, they hear that, they don't know what you're talking about. You know, right? They're recording him. But the recording guy was recording, going back, fixing up the recording, you know, putting a start and a finish, and he's listening to the quality the whole way through, then he's ready the next day. He knew everything the Shaykh had said, what the responses was. And he became a Shaykh. Just by following him, ask him anything in Tafseer, he was the one that knew it. Because that was a Shaykh of Tafseer. You ask him about the ayahs, well, the Shaykh said this. You know, this, that, and another thing like that. Backwards and forwards. So Ahl al-Dhikri contains all of those individuals.
Excuse me, what if we're in a situation, we're in an area where there is no one that can answer your question?
The question is, what if you're in an area, situation where there is no one that can answer the question? Well, that's why we're here. For number one, we have these things called phones now, okay? That is very unique. I don't even know why we still call them a phone. I think it's a traditional thing because it's really a computer. There are some websites that have taken and putting questions up there. I wouldn't say trust them all the time. Why? Because a question is going to be answered according to the cultural, and unless we have proof, come on, say it like you mean it. And unless we have proof that a people's practice, okay, so the answer is going to be from the angle of that people's practice, okay? And the question is only going to be a summarization of what the real question was to some degree, okay? So it may not help you all the time, but if you know that person, that sheikh, if you know that person, then you can text that person, you can call that person. If you have a classmate that knows, hey, did you ever hear something about this? Or you can learn the principles that we're teaching so that you can do your best, do your level best at that moment when you're forced to, right? Because hardships and harms, you have to do something, okay? In that particular situation, if you don't have anything else. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
All right. So, conscientious. I like to talk about this term for a second. We know the most conscientious objector in American history. Who was that? Say it again. In American history? Pay attention to what? Details. The most conscientious objector in American history is who? Muhammad Ali. Say rahimahullah. Rahimahullah. You remember Muhammad Ali, guys? What did he say? He said basically this. He said what every Negro should have said that went to fight or was asked to fight. He understood what you asking me to do. That's why it's called conscientious. You telling me you want me to go fight for you, kill somebody, or get killed. I don't even know this person. Ain't never done me no wrong, but you won't even let me eat at your restaurant. Right. Use your toilet, or even drink from your water fountain. And at nighttime, I gotta watch about you killing me, raping my sister and my wife. You get my point? Yes. That don't make no sense. And if you don't like it, take your gold medal, throw it in the Ohio River, right? You want the belt? Take it too. I ain't going. Hey, do what you like, because I understand the ruling, meaning the consequences of what you are asking me to do. Does that make sense? Yeah. Am I conscious? My mind, my damir will not settle and not make me feel comfortable to do that based on what the consequences will be at the end of that. You get my point, guys?
Yes.
So the competent adult is the conscientious one, aware of every rule, the ramifications. And that's because he knows what? Halalun unravels with the haramun is the opposite of good, meaning no good whatsoever, right? Corruptive, destructive.
Never understood.
So this is what he understands. And he tawakkal ala Allah. He trusts that whatever Allah said is halal, then that's what I'm going to do, because I trust that it's going to come out with a positive effect. And whatever is haram, I know to stay away from that, because I know it too is going to come up with a no good whatsoever. It's the opposite of good. And I trust on that. And that's how we can become mutawakkilun. You know, that's how we become those who trust and depend upon Allah. Dependent on those principles, that understanding. That's when your iman is born in your action. The connection, the rabit between the two. Does everybody make sense?
Yes.
So that it doesn't make sense, and it never was in Islam until prior to 1918, that there was a thing where someone could say he was Muslim and then not act like it. I'm just not practicing. Makes no sense. Because part of your iman is to believe that halalun unravels with the and that haramun is harmful, the opposite of good. Does that make sense? Yes. And if you believe that, then it would show in your body. There was no separation between the two. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, now that doesn't mean we do anything about those individuals, but we understand that that is a false doctrine. that is just saying, I'm a kafir, but I don't want to say that. Because what the person saying, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. How much I want to do. That's democracy. That's not Islam. Democracy is the rights of the individual outweigh the rights of the group. That's right? I can play my music as loud as I want to. I can do whatever I want to. You can't tell me nothing. I can say I'm Muslim. I can say I'm the prophet. You can't be offended. I can do anything sacrilege I want. Does that make sense? And I don't care if you're offended. Democracy. Where Islam is the rights of the group outweigh the rights of the individual. The Jama'ah has more rights than the individual. As it should. And this is the fitrah. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Why? It's to not even in an amoeba, even in a cell. When you have cells and things inside the cell that go against the benefit of the cell, what happens? They destroy those things. Right? Even in the smallest cell. And if you look at from space, the planet, all it is a cell doing the same thing. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes, sir.
You asked the question, you said, why is it like that? And from my perspective, I'm thinking it's because it preserves the society.
It does preserve the society, and that's what my point is. In the life of the society, see, we have been taught, you said a point, it says, why is it like that? Why is Islam like that? Because it preserves the society. Yes. What's been promoted to colored people and people who have been conquered is that your individual success is what you should shoot for. There's a Chinese concept that they use to control peoples. I call it the Michael Jordan. Okay? The Chinese army would reward some of anybody who, with no real criteria, some warrior who did really good on a battlefield with an enormous amount of treasure. What does that make the people do on the battlefield? Fight with their life because they want to get that treasure, put their family up in a sense. But only a few individuals are getting it. You get it?
Yes.
And China is an expression of a huge society, so many different peoples at 5 kingdoms, you know. That's what China is, actually 5 countries that came together and in that way. So they do the same thing now. But what we have to recognize, and we should at this stage recognize, that as a Muslim ummah, how they divided us and took us into, made us into pieces, and they, you know, made nationalism in place of the Islamic ummah. And the same thing here in so-called Black America, where your individual, how many individual successes we have. But know this, your individual success dies with that individual. Where communal success lives the life of the community. No matter how great you become, you paying the price if it's on your own. Because now who your child going to marry? You get my point? So there has to be communal success. That has to be the focus. The preservation. He said legacy. What's the proof? Watawaso bil. The word tawaso in and of itself is legacy. To leave the legacy of haqq, the truth, the reality. What is the truth? Al-Islam. The realistic worldview of Islam. How things are actually are. Watawaso bis sabr. Why sabr? And leave the legacy of the hard work that it takes to do that. The annoyance that it takes. Because a lot of us don't do because we don't want to suffer the doing. We want the result. And that's why most of us will not leave the United States. Because there's no AC, or we think there's no AC anywhere else.
Right.
Really? Okay? Oh, we're going to lose, the light's going to go out. Have you lived in North Carolina? The lights go out. You know, maybe not, I don't know about Durham, but in Greensboro, the lights go out. I come home, the lights are out. All the time. Tornadoes, or whatever the thing they call it. You know? So, when I lived in Florida, the lights and the thing went out every year, as much as it does in Egypt. As much. And we used to count and say, man, we thought this was so-called Hadariya, right? Similar to it. You ever lived in Louisiana, Texas? You get my point? But we think the quality of life is better here. So we put up with more stress, which ruins the quality of life here. right? And then we still, on top of that, don't get to express ourselves Islamically, which is a spiritual breathing.
Yes.
And it also puts frustration and oppression of the own soul. What does Allah say about that individual? Allah says about that individual that those who, when the angels take his soul, when he is, say it, ظَالِمُ نَفْسِ, right?
Yes.
He is oppressing his own self. That's what Allah says. The angel says, فِيمَا كُنْتُمْ. What does he say? What was your situation? قَالُوا كُنَّا مُسْتَضْعِفِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. They respond saying, we was oppressed in the land. That sound familiar?
Yes. Yes.
We was oppressed. They didn't give us no respect. So what does the angel say? He says in response, are you trying to say, you got to understand the context. The angel rebukes him. He says, are you trying to say that the earth of Allah wasn't spacious enough for you? Allah didn't make the earth big enough for you? That you couldn't have went no place else? That you had to sit there and put up with that? That's the question that we all have to ask ourselves. Okay? Yeah, take that out your mouth. Allah swears by the pen. Okay? If Allah swears by something in a positive way, that shows that thing has status. And we shouldn't, we should respect it and honor it. The pen is considered the first thing Allah created before anything else. And then he told it, write. Maqadir, write the qadr. So we have to respect pens. Okay, you can stick it in your ear, you can do something you put in your mouth and disrespect it and stuff like that. Alhamdulillah. Anyway, the point is we have to go beyond just learning to gather facts. We have to learn for it to have a meaningful application in our life. Okay? And that way it makes education very, very influential. If I multiply 5 times 0, what am I going to get?
0.
If I multiply 100,000 times 0, what am I going to get?
0.
Right, so if you gain a whole bunch, but you multiply it by 0 effort, okay? What are you going to get out of that? 0. And this is what we're promoting. We have to deal with these issues first. So if you're not willing to do nothing with what you learn, you are now just gathering proof against yourself. Son, I just spoke about the pen. Put it down. Does that make sense, guys? Yes. If you're not willing, and this is a humongous idea, that I am going to learn something, and I am going to act upon what I learn. Why? This idea is so humongous, it's in Al-Fatiha. And any idea in Al-Fatiha is a tremendous idea. What's the proof? I'm saying it's in Al-Fatiha. Go beyond the Tafseer. Allah describes 3 types of people. One type of people, maghdubi alayhim. Why is Allah angry with them?
Because
they know the truth and they
rejected it.
And no, they didn't just reject it, they didn't act on it. They abandoned it. Not us, no, we're Muslim, right? That's what we say. We're going to get to that. The other group is called Daleen. Why are they Daleen? Astray. Come on, guys, speak to me.
I'm not guided. Nobody guided.
They don't know nothing. They don't have the proof. But because even without the proof, they act without even knowing. Right? They don't know when they act. And they have strong opinions and they don't know.
Conjecture.
Right? They move on that stuff. What's the middle group? Don't whisper at me. I don't want the Arabic, I want the meaning. What is the description of these people? No. The middle group is the people who they act on what they know. You see, it's between those 2 extremes. The one group, they know and they don't act. The other group act without knowledge. The middle group is the group that acts on what they know and they stop when they don't know. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes. This is the tafsir of that. That middle group is that group that acts on what you are not about what you don't know. Meaning, ignorance of the law is an excuse of the law in Islam. But you will be questioned about what you know, and what you understood, and what you refuse to apply. Now that's a scary understanding. But that's all you're asked to do. So be careful about learning and not having even the intention to apply it. Some people just want to say, I was there. Seriously. This is a sick individual, auntie. No, this person is worshiping people's face. I say, yeah, I was there. He wants people to know. He wants his name associated, but not really for doing anything. Does that make sense? So, again, understand the concept. Now, there's another point to it. You can't be criminally negligent. Even though ignorance of the law is an excuse of the law, you get a crime if you pretend like you don't know. Same in the United States. If you pretend like you don't see the crime and you're involved in it, you still get the crime. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes.
Now, in regards to what we're saying, the application is Allah knows what He put in you. Allah knows what good sense He gave you. Allah knows what opportunities He gave you and what you understood. So you can't pretend like you didn't know. You didn't understand. You didn't recognize your opportunity. And it comes in a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he was going to choose a person to lead a particular group. So he started to interview each one of them. And each one of them said, how much Quran do you know? How much Quran do you know? How much Quran? And then he met a young man who was not one of the nobles amongst the people. And he wasn't one of the older people, showing the criteria should be first, knowledge and nobility and elder. Right? I spoke to you guys the last time about how we've ruined it by the elders not taking over the da'wah and teaching from a position of seniority. Okay? So he was a young person without a famous father or mother or family. But he had memorized Baqarah and Ali Imran. The Prophet said, some said, you memorized Baqarah and Ali Imran? He said, yes. He said, you are their leader. You are the Amir. So a nobleman, senior in age, stood up and said, man, I was going to memorize it, but I was scared of having the responsibility of everything that comes with once you know that. And the Prophet said, no, don't do that. Memorize it. So we learn from this narration, you can't run from your responsibilities. Allah says, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Meaning that the believer, the one who has taqwa, is the one that uses what Allah has given him. And we're not talking about money alone, but all of the auspices, all of the things, the gifts, the ni'mah that Allah has given you, you are spending them. You're exerting them. Fi sabilillah. Fi sabilillah doesn't mean giving it away. As some people want you to think when they want your money. But fi sabilillah means in the way that Allah intended you to apply it first and foremost in your life. Remember that circle of influence. Starting with your life and your friends and family, those surround you, then building on that circle as it spins outward. The Prophet ﷺ went home and told his wife, gave her da'wah, his children, his close friend Abu Bakr, his relatives, cousins, and then eventually the whole Arabian Peninsula, and then the world. And so that's the same thing that we have to do. If you take on the responsibility of learning, you have to take it on the multiplication of beyond zero. Because even if you just give 1% of effort, what happens? 5,000 times 1. Give me some math, guys.
5,000.
Equals 5,000, right? So that's just 1% effort, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises us that if you walk towards Allah, if you make slow effort towards Allah, Allah races towards you. If you hustle towards Allah, Allah flies towards you. So it's going to be multiplied beyond your effort. But the point I want to make here is you have to be willing to be brave enough and adventurous enough to put your total tawakkal ala Allah. One sheikh told me, never doubt that a small group of dedicated people can change the world. Indeed, nothing else ever has. How many prophets have there been? 125,000. They've changed the world, right? How many Sahaba? And they're changing the world still today. So it's never going to be the masses. Don't wait for that. You do your level best. When Allah says in the Quran, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ دِينَ. Sincere subtraction. مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ دِينَ. Do your level best. Your sincere level best. That's the agreement here. Okay, guys?
Yes.
All right, well, let's see. The competent adult is the conscientious one.
The competent adult is the conscientious one.
Aware of every ruling on whatever he wants done.
Aware of every ruling on whatever he wants done.
That's the statement of competency. That's where we start. Now we go to the +2. These are the 2 that go along with the 5 legal rulings. Now one of them is called Sahih. What is it called?
Sahih.
The other one is called Batil. What is it called?
Batil.
Now Sahih is anything that you need to do in order to fulfill that thing, or it doesn't break that thing, that act. For example, if I want to offer salah, what do I need?
Wudu.
So wudu is sahihun for salah. Can I talk while I'm making wudu?
No.
Yes, you can.
You can.
I can talk. As long as I don't lose my direction or what I'm doing, I can say, hey, assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. I can talk while I'm making wudu as long as it's not putting water in my mouth, right, Joe? You know.
So you're saying women that come into the restroom while you're making wudu can talk to you?
Okay, so now you added conditions there. Okay, we have to remember, attention to what?
Details.
What are details? Small things that look insignificant but weigh a lot. Okay? No, all battles. I went to war college. We studied battles. All battles have been lost over something that looked real small. There's a famous Chinese, and this is in The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Famous, what do you call it? What do you call a horseman? Guy. Cavalry. Jazakallah khair. Barakallah fikum. He did that laying back cavalry. The cavalry usually determine the war, determine the battle, because they come down with that force. Now modern day cavalry is considered helicopters. Okay? That's modern cavalry. So the cavalry before used to be cavalero, the horses. So this one famous cavalry general never had lost a battle on the battlefield, always ran across it. He was resting, he was getting his horse ready, and there was a bird. You know those birds, the little green things that's got a nut in the middle of it and it sticks to your blanket? He threw the blanket on, the horse whinnied, right? He said, oh, it's just a small little bird. Then he put the saddle on there and he tied it up, and the stirrups was a little bit off. Because you know that little bit, once you put the saddle, now it's a little bit off more. When he sat on there, the horse, was like a little bit uncomfortable. And his foot couldn't, so when he got it right, and in that battle, he was killed. And they said they couldn't determine what happened. How this guy, but then when they went back and they found that bird, they said, listen, you know what? This guy did one thing wrong, one small thing. He relied on his skill, right? He just relied on his skill instead of just taking the time to take that small thing, right? Small little rock. Threw off his stirrup, you could see his foot missed it. So he couldn't get the way he was normally getting. The horse was agitated and he was destroyed in that battle. Attention to what?
Details.
What are details? Small things. It may look small, but it's a big difference. Her statement was, what about if, when someone, I'm modifying it. Someone's in the bathroom, okay? Restroom, she said. But let's call it what most people call it, the toilet. Now, there's a difference between a bathroom and a toilet in Arabic and Islamic law, okay? However, today, modern day toilets have a bathroom in the same room, some of them, right? Because the people, why do they make them like that? Because of space and money, period. Everything is money based, okay? You got nice money, you can have a toilet and the bathroom different, as some houses do. But if the toilet is there, what do the scholars say about this particular thing nowadays? Number one, it's not the same toilet that we used to use overseas. Okay? And the word gla'it, it doesn't refer to the feces. It used to refer to the place where you go to use the services. So then the act became known as gla'it, from the place. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now the reason why that place was hands off, because there's no way to get rid of those feces, is there? It's there. And it smells and it's dirty. And if it gets on your clothes, you have to wash them. Correct?
Yes.
Now today's modern day bathrooms have water in the toilets. They usually have a brush nearby. What happens is we don't train the people to use the brush every time they use the toilet. To clean up after themselves, to cover the toilet back down, right? And normally that place should be kept clean. When it is like that, it is not the same toilet. And the feces go what? Out the room. So the ulama do not count this description as fitting the legal description of a toilet in that regard. Unless there's feces there and all that. But what about the public restrooms? Don't you see there's a stall there? There's a barrier. And we call one different than the other. Does the stall have to go all the way up to the roof? Nothing states that. But there is a demarcation between the two. And so the area where you wash your hands, especially in the Muslim masajid, in those places, they make sure that there's some type of barrier. You know, as much as their money allows them to design it. So that when they're in the wudu station, you're not as the same as a person who's in the toilet part, utilizing the toilet. Now the person in the toilet, he should not speak. He should not. Did I say it's haram?
No.
Should not. Can he? In a darura, in an emergency, if there has to be something. His wife comes in and she doesn't know if he's in the house and she calls out to him. He can let her know that he's in the house. You get my point? But he shouldn't have a conversation. Well, how about them Yankees? You know? No, you know, some of the non-Muslims, they put their Bible in there.
Yep.
And they sit there and they read. This is a disgusting, savage thing to do. But this is what happens, and sometimes the Muslims imitate that. Okay? Children sometimes don't know. We have to train them. So, alhamdulillah, does that answer your question? You see, I didn't get to too detailed because some cases you might say, well, no, I'm not going to do that. Depending on the description of the place, the cleanliness of the place.
I just want to know, according to your description, is it okay to give back the greeting?
Definitely.
Brothers and sisters will give
It's
you-
okay to give back the greetings, yes. Okay? It is okay to give back the greetings. Yes, ma'am? Right, a lot of people think that you can't say that. But okay, but where does it say that you can't give salams? What's a bathroom? We just talked about that. But I will go so far. If you would go back and look at the fiqh books, they'll even say even if you're in the toilet and you have to, I said durura, a necessity. Someone's calling out to you to find out if you're there. You can respond to them. Does that make sense? When a durura, should you while you're on the toilet? Of course not. Okay? And it's in the poem, as children we were potty trained, so toilet rules should not be strange. You know, we go through that whole thing in first grade fiqh. You know, no reading, writing, talking in. Squat the way the Prophet taught. Use water and, you know, your left in the water. It's a nice poem, inshallah ta'ala. Don't want to get us distraction.
Is that a necessary book to have, first grade fiqh?
I think
Would
it
that
is.
help us?
Yes, I think it will. We'll get to it though. Right now, no. Right now, get these usul. Too many times, one of the other problems that we have as students, we don't know how to be students. Students want to be teachers or assistant teachers, and they mess it up. Too many cooks spoil the broth, right?
Yes.
Be the student. And we're going over the usul now, right? Once we finish the usul, the next lesson is on how to be a student. Right? The usulu adab al-talaba ilm. Remember we said that? That comes too. Because I don't know how many students come and tell, well, you got to teach me like this. Excuse me. Pardon? No. No comprendo. I don't understand that. If that was the case, then you teach and I'll sit down. You get my point? Now, of course, teaching is not like fixing things. Once you learn how to fix a TV, you can fix every TV. People are not the same. The human factor is different. That's my plug for teachers getting more pay than an IT guy. But, it don't work that way, right? Things get more. My point is this. Teaching is a unique skill. But learning is also a unique skill. Okay? There has to be trust. Okay? And when there's trust, you get far quicker. Okay? Now, it may seem like I spoke about something that does not have anything to do with anything today, but it has everything to do with your growth. Understanding that you have to multiply that with what? The effort to apply what you know. And that not doing that makes you like a kafir. Makes you like what Allah described as those people who He is angry with. For example, we say we don't do that, right? Don't we say that, Ahmed?
Yes.
Okay. What's the ruling on making Hajj?
Wajib.
Who said that you have to be financially stable? Where did you get that from?
Your basic needs have to be met.
Who told you that? The rule for making وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حَجُّ الْبَيْتِ. Allah says that Allah has a right over mankind to make Hajj to that bayt. Man istata'ta alayhi sabila. Whoever has a way to get there. No other conditions is laid down. So the ruling in the Sharia is that whoever has the means to make the rahila, to make the trip, he has a way. He don't even have to need a way to get back. Nowadays, you can't go without getting back. You know that, right? Don't try it. Yeah, I got a one-way ticket. They're going to, mafish dukhul yani eh. They're not going to let you in yani.
That implies you have to take care of your independence.
You have to have the means of going there and getting back nowadays because you only get this only round-trip ticket. They're not going to allow you without the round-trip ticket. But excuse me?
It's more to it than
No, it's not. Not conditions. Conditions for you to make Hajj. I'm getting to a point here. See, the point is this. Once you have the ability to make it there and back, it's obligatory for you. That's the point I'm trying to make.
that. What about for the women?
Well, women have a different rule. We're talking about the general rule. Okay? Because the same thing can be said. The ability to get there. So the ability to get there for the woman is also to have a mahram. To take her there, unless she's over 42 and not married. And then she can come with a group.
Okay, so
But my point, let me get through the point here. The point is that it's obligatory. Like salah. So the person who has the ability and still doesn't do, in some cases is to be considered a kafir. Why? Because he rejected one of the pillars of Islam. Do you understand the point here? Now, I'm not calling anybody a kafir, but I'm making you understand how we do that. We have the money to do it, we buy a better car. We have the money to do it, we fix up our house. The ruling in the Sharia, if you have a broken down beast, but it's working, or you had a hole in the wall, you can't fix that wall. You can't buy an upgrade on your car until you fulfill your obligation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We have misunderstood the application of the pillars of Islam. Hajj is not an option, as we find it in the Western mind. I'll get around to it once I get settled, once I get my financials in order. No. As soon as you have enough to eat, you have enough to get around, now you have to take all that rest of the money. It's Allah's. It's like a debt. Because Allah said, Lillahi ala nas. There's a debt we owe to Allah. Does that make sense what I'm trying to apply?
Yes.
What about if they're in debt before they leave?
So what? Having a debt, when we get into, he says, what if you have a debt before they leave? So what? Who says you can't borrow money to go make Hajj?
And that's the story that's out.
That's a story that says from a particular madhab. But the law didn't say that. If someone, you telling me I can't give you money to go? Are you trying to say that? No, we're not saying that. So in fact, we should be saying it because Ibn Uthaymeen, he used to say, Adrik ma la tastati bima tastati. Do what you can do when you can't do, when you can't, oh, sorry, do what you, when you can't do something, do what you can do. Meaning, how he used to apply it. If I can't make it to Hajj this year, then I take my money and I give it to him, and he takes it, he goes to Hajj. So next year he gives me the money, now I went to Hajj. See, so one couldn't do it, so two did it. If two can't do it, then three did it. African the descendants in America are the 9th wealthiest people on the planet. You trying to tell me that we can't send a group of us to Hajj every year?
Of course we can.
And then each one of us get the barakah of that group going? And then next year the next group going? And in 5 years probably all of us would have gone? No, we have misunderstood the application of a wajib. This is not something that is, okay, we're casual about it. No, this is a debt. That's the first debt you have to pay. And those that can't make it to Hajj, then make them send the Umrah. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So in that regard, we are just like the Jews. Hearing and not applying. Making any old type of excuse.
Don't let what you can't do stop you from doing what you can.
That's basically what it says. That's a better way. Don't let what you can't do stop you from doing what you can do. Perfect. That's excellent.
People do it over and over themselves.
Excuse me?
I said people go 2 and 3 times themselves.
Yes, there's nothing wrong with them doing that.
As opposed to helping somebody who can't go.
Okay, we can't blame a person for going when we haven't set up a system where we say, hey, help someone else go. Okay, if we were inviting them, saying, hey, let's go put together, and then they were refusing, then we can say, oh, come on now. But if we haven't set it up to say, okay, look, let's set it up, let's educate people to do it, because to some Muslims it's a fairy tale, especially the people in the West who have geographically not really traveled. That big ocean is like, TV. And then anything over there is not realistic. So we have to set up a situation, and then we can say, okay, contribute, take part in that particular system, inshallah. Yes, ma'am.
So what's the ruling on going for a woman without a mahram, not going?
What is the ruling on a woman who has the means to go make Hajj, but she doesn't go because she doesn't have a mahram, okay? And she meets the age requirement where they make the exception, right?
Who they make the exception?
Saudi Arabia.
Okay, but that's
Saudi Arabia has the keys to the Kaaba right now. So in a realistic sense, we have to fulfill their requirements to get into the country. Okay, that's always the way it is, and that's an Islamic obligation. They have set a standard that any woman under 42, I believe it's 42, cannot come to Hajj if she's not married and she doesn't have a mahram. Okay? Now a woman who's over 42 and not married, then they make an exception for her, only if she's with a group. And there's a man in that group who's holding responsibility for them. Because there's still a good understanding in the rest of the world that women should not be left on their own without someone there responsible to protect them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now we've lost a lot of sense of that. Okay, with the emasculation of men and with the homosexuality and even the effemination of men. So that the men are not doing everything that we should be doing. But in that place, they're saying, no, you can't come here unless you have some man who's going to be watching over you. That we can call to account. When you get ready to leave the country, where are all your women? Where are they at? What happened to them? Okay, they can go. And they'll hold him up. They'll hold him up. I've seen this happen before. Guy he was from, not Tunis, Aljazair. He brought his daughter, came over, married her off, and tried to slip out. They said, no, you showed up, you a little light. You had more baggage. You had even another whole person. Where's she at? So he had to go back, get her. They went through customs and she came back out. Okay? She came back out the other place and went back with her husband. But they wasn't going to let him go. She didn't, because she didn't have the right paperwork at that time. You know? So they make sure, hey man, you brought a woman here, you better show up something. So you better kill somebody, sold somebody, you know? I mean, this is the real world. They sell, Saudi Arabia, they sell women.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I mean, we're being realistic here. You know? So, alhamdulillah, we're not trying to make the world a scary place, but responsibilities are responsibilities. The ruling for the woman that doesn't have a way, then she's forgiven. Okay?
She doesn't have her way, meaning she doesn't have a mahram, she's forgiven.
Whatever, if she doesn't have the means to make it, means being a mahram to go with her, or that the system over here isn't set up to help her, facilitate her to do that, then she has an excuse.
I don't understand the group thing.
I'll explain it. The group thing is
that
this.
in the Sharia or this is Saudi?
Okay, is the Sharia, is it from the Sharia to have a group thing, or is it from Saudi? Both. Islam allows for a woman to travel in a group because it fulfills the obligation of her not being alone. In circumstances when it's a darura, she has to travel or something, and there's no other way out. Hardships and harms
Have to be removed.
relieved of or eased up in some way soon. So now she's in a hardship situation. Why? Because she has the means to pay the debt to Allah and no way of getting there. So this group of people are going. They have a contract with Saudi. They have men that are responsible. They have set it up where she will be safe from point A to point B. They put her in a vehicle, and they take her to, and they keep her in a safe environment. Yes, that is allowed. Does that make sense? And we have it in the Sharia where, you know, the Prophet ﷺ allowed certain circumstances when there was some tight situations. Okay? So, you know, we have to look at that. What Saudi is doing, yeah, they have a rule, they have a right to do that. They have a right to demand that some group of men, if it's not going to be her men, then some men.
No, of course, but I didn't know that with the Sharia, meaning in the Quran.
Let me stop you. You know what? The problem is you think you have to make the ruling.
No,
But then, if that's not the case, then you have to accept the ruling of the ones in authority. You see, sometimes we say, well, I don't agree with that. Well, you know, you're not in charge. No, seriously, no disrespect, of course. I'm not meaning to disrespect her. I'm just saying, let's look at what we're talking about from a legal perspective. These are the people, I mentioned it earlier when I said they have the keys to the Kaaba. They are in charge. Whoever has the keys to the Kaaba controls Islam. Okay? And that's why it was vitally important for them to take it away from the Ottomans. Okay? I have a quote I wrote down. Here's my paper right here. This is a quote, a memo. I wrote this down. It's a memorandum from the British legation to the Middle East on the Mohammedan question in 1917. Captain Bray, and I quote, "At the present moment, agitation is intense in all Mohammedan countries. We should therefore create a state more convenient for ourselves, to whom the attention of Islam should be turned. We have an opportunity in Arabia," unquote. And then if you look at the history, at the same year, 1917, they didn't turn the keys over to 1922, when the general, the Pasha, the Ottoman Pasha, refused to turn the keys over to the British. And he kept his people in place until after the war, until they determined that they would not turn it over to the British, they would turn it over to the Saudi family at that point. And that's when they did. He was the last holding out Ottoman general. And at that time, you know, the Ottoman Sultan said, look, whoever takes over the Kaaba, then they're going to control Islam. And what happened after that point, once they took over, what happened? Islam was now decentralized. Now there were no longer one Islamic ummah, there were nation states. Okay? Jordan was born. Saudi Arabia, Oman, and all these other places became born. Africa was left to its own and they became colonized. The Balkans now taken over. Okay? No more Austria-Hungary, now Russia. all the stands got eaten up by Russia, right? And that lasted until the 90s, right? When the wall of Germany came down. It's just a continuation of the destruction of the Islamic Empire. Okay? If we would just understand where we are. Okay? They say this one in Olaf, they say that if you find yourself on the road and traveling through the jungle and you don't know where you're at, go back until you recognize the terrain. Which means you want to go forward, you got to go back and look at the history and see where it all got confusing. And that'll put everything else in context. Today, in this Kafir calendar, is 2019. The Khalifa went down in 1918. This is the first 100 years since Islam that we have lived without a leadership. And so all the things that we see now are a result of the absence of leadership. In light of that, when Saudi, the ones who hold the keys, make a rule for you to enter, then we have to abide by that rule. Be it just or unjust is not the question. What is our responsibility and obligation Islamically at that point is to fulfill whatever criteria they have set in order for us to visit the Kaaba and fulfill our obligation. Does that make sense? Yes. Yeah? I'm not saying it's fair, but that's what we have to do. And then we have to do our job to facilitate our sisters to go.
We see it fair, wallahi.
See it all over.
Without any doubt, we see it fair.
Alhamdulillah. These are two conditions. Sahihun is something that you can complete, okay? And it's not going to invalidate the deed. Batilun is something that if you do it, it will invalidate the deed. If I take cooking oil and I put it in my water and I start making wudu, is that sahih to complete, or is that an invalidating feat? What is a feat? Give me a full sentence, people. A feat is an action, usually a daring feat, right? They usually put that adjective there, that it's something amazing, right? But here we're just saying it's amazing because it's invalidating. You get my point? Anything that invalidates, any action that invalidates the initial action is called batil. Say batil. Batil. Not batil, batil. Batil. And this one is called sahihun. Sahihun. So memorize. The competent adult is the conscientious one.
Competent adult is the conscientious one.
Aware of every ruling on whatever he wants done.
Aware of every ruling on whatever he wants done.
Focused on conditions sahihun to complete.
Focus on conditions sahihun to complete.
Avoiding every batilun invalidating feat.
Avoiding every batilun invalidating feat.
This is all I need you to memorize right now.
Would you define?
No, not wise.
Would you define batilun again?
Yes, invalidating.
Just invalidating.
Yes, ma'am. Normally, when I put these poems together, I try to show the word proximity. Or afterwards like that. Batilun means invalidating, literally. Okay?
Is that feet? F-E-E-T?
F-E-E-T. Might be spelled wrong.
F-E-A-T.
F-E-A?
No, F-E-T-E.
No, that's fete. F-E-A-T is feet. Give me somebody look it up.
F-E-A-T.
It's a feet, right. Like I'm going to stand on my hands. It's a feet. See?
That's a feat.
That's a feet.
Amazing.
Amazing feet.
Would you please spell bad? Is it bad T-loon or
Batilun. You see I put a capital T there?
Oh.
Because it's not a T. It's a tha. Batil. Put ta is the strongest letter in the Arabic alphabet. What is tha? Say it. Say it. Tha is tha. Batil. I always write it with a capital letter in order to point it out if we're writing it in English. I know some people said, oh, well, you work on the Arabic. Not necessarily. We're going to get there. Shay'in for shay'in, or shwayya for shwayya. Yani, piece by piece. We will go over the alphabet. Once we go over the alphabet together, then you'll see a lot more Arabic. But there's step by step. You don't need Arabic reading at this point to understand what we're putting down in this way. Once we go over the Arabic, and I know there are Arab-speaking people here, but we have to go on the pace of the majority, okay? But really, it doesn't take long. If you stay within a couple of months, everyone will be fluent. Inshallah. I'm going to do my part.
I'm gonna do my part, inshallah.
Inshallah ta'ala. Inshallah, we all do our parts. Batilun.
Batilun.
Avoiding every batilun, invalidating feat.
Avoiding every batilun, invalidating feat.
The competent adult is the conscientious one.
The competent adult is the conscientious one.
Aware of every ruling on whatever he wants done.
Aware of every ruling on whatever he wants done.
Focused on conditions, sahihun to complete.
Focus on conditions, sahihun to complete.
Avoiding every batilun, invalidating feat.
Avoiding every batilun, invalidating feat.
That's what you have as a lesson this week. That's the +2. These +2 affect all the deeds, right? Because you could be doing something that's wajib, but then do something that is batilun, right? And invalidate that act, right?
Yes.
The last two, the plus two?
These two are sahihun and batilun are the +2. I'll overline it. 1, 2. These are the +2.
Sahih is anything you need.
Sahihun, that is focused on sahihun to complete. Sahih means correct, authentic to complete. It's in any act that you can complete and not invalidate the deed. It's correct to do. That's why we call it a condition. A correct condition that you can complete, and it's not going to affect the deed in a negative fashion. Like I said, talking in making wudu doesn't invalidate it. You don't need to do it, but it's not going to invalidate it. Making wudu in order to offer salah is sahihun because you need to do it to complete it. It's a condition. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So any of those conditions that are sahihun to complete, and I figure sahih is a word that everybody knows. Because we say, like, sahih. Right, so it's become part, just like sahih is you don't have to translate sahih. Most of the words you're not going to be able to sahih, going to translate, because we're going to make them, what do you call it? Home words or what is it? What's the word? Household names.
Household name.
Household word terms, okay?
And are both those H?
Like when I say mouse, do y'all look for squeak squeak? Or did y'all think about that thing? Right, because it became a household term, right? Yes, ma'am.
Are both of those hat in there, the two? The
Yes,
H?
both. Whenever I put hat, I make it a hard hat, a capital H. Okay? And when it's a lowercase, then it's healthy, ho, heavy. Sahihun. That's no hold, ha. That's what that ha is from. Okay? Because heavy, hard, history, that's the heavy one. As opposed to the hard ha, like jalapeno. I know that's with a J, right? Hey, go figure, it's English. No rules count. Seriously. No, we're not going to do the other side. We plan to do the other side, but we're not going to do it. There's a rule, guys. The rule is this. قَلِيلٌ قَرَّ خَيْرٌ مِنْ كَثِيرٍ فَرَّ. A little bit made strong is better than a lot that gets away like a Ferrari. Okay?
Like a Ferrari.
That's right. Farra. The word Ferrari comes from the Arabic word farra. Farra. Okay? You want to know what you call this? You call this the 5 legal rulings. The five legal rulings plus 2. You only see 1, 2, 3. What do you see? I'm not giving it to you. No, you didn't do that one yet. No, you took a test. See, you know what happened? The doctor, he asked me a question. He put me on the spot. And I broke I did the wrong thing as a teacher. Teachers have to be patient, because teachers are anxious. They want to give you, right? They want to give you all the lessons, but we have to be patient and give you what is age appropriate. Does that make sense? You know, it has to be didactic. So when he asked, that's why I told him before, he can't ask questions in the class. He asked some other questions that would have confused the whole class. Say boo. No, I'm teasing. No, but you know, certain things you can't deal with at a stage. We got to go by what is the majority is. So I jumped the gun and I explained stuff to you that was out of turn. And that's why I held your papers for like 2 weeks. And I said, I don't want to get these back to you because it's inappropriate. But then I was like, I don't want to hold them too long. You guys think that I'm incompetent. And I don't want you to think that I'm incompetent, because then you lose trust in the teacher. You get my point? You know, so I said, let me give them back, but give you a warning that it was my fault. So we went back and we went over the things that we're supposed to go, which is the maqasid al-sharia and the qawa'id al-fiqhiyya, or the primary principles of fiqh. Then the 5 legal rulings plus 2 come. And there is a didactic, meaningful connection to each one of them in this way. This is the recipe. Okay? You have to memorize it. You have to know it like a poet.
Okay, what's one?
Okay. One is the competent adult, is the conscientious one, aware of every ruling on whatever he wants done, focused on conditions, sahihun to complete, avoiding every batilun, invalidating feat.
That's one?
No, one is here.
The plus 2.
1, 2, 3, 4. Plus 2 is just, this is just the title. This is the title. This is what you put it under. Okay? Everybody follow me? Now, I know I only gave you a little bit this week, but I want you to know it. If you know, now there's a lot of issues that we could talk about as we go through this, but as we go along, I'm going to be asking you based on the principles that we follow. Does that make sense? We keep going back and forth like that. But, you know, there is a technique. There's a technique to this matter.
These Sheikh Abu Tafs, I'd like to know what we were prepared for today. Those have something to do with legal judgment?
Yes, these have everything to do with legal judgments. Rulings means legal judgments. A judgment is we judge an act. What do we call that act, right? Intentions will decide?
Rulings of an act.
Okay, see, the intention will decide the ruling. This is the ruling. What are the rulings that we're going to call that act? There are 5 rulings. There are 5 things we can call it. Now, what do these have to do with it? Okay? So when a person is determining, aware of every ruling on whatever he wants done, he has to also be aware what's sahih to complete in that act and what's batil in that act. Does that make sense? That's the connection. And we have to know this first. That there are things, and a lot of people learn the 5 rulings and don't learn these 2 things. How they affect. Or they're familiar with it, but they're not certain that these things are in place with everything you do. Does that make sense?
The only thing I still don't understand what they mean. Plus 2, plus 2.
Plus 2, okay, there are 5 rulings plus 2. That means there's 7 things you have to learn. 7 terms you have to learn.
The wajib, you might not remember the wajib, the mustahab.
No, that's okay. We didn't teach that today. There are 5 rulings. We haven't covered those 5 rulings yet. We just covered the plus 2. The plus 2 is 1 and 2. No, not in the poetry. Okay? A lot of times I give you something and then I give you the poem. Don't you notice that?
Yes.
I do that to get your mind started on it. Okay? And then I make you memorize it afterwards. So that your mind starts working on it, and then as your mind is working on it, say, man, I wish I could memorize it. I give you something to memorize. Okay? To make it easy. These are the plus 2. Plus 1, plus 2.
I need to know what's is a salihun?
Sahihun.
Sahihun. What
Yes.
does that mean?
That means that it is correct.
Oh, okay. And the
Invalidating.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, I didn't define sahihun because I played on that everybody would know what the word sahih was, and pretty much, or we could mention it and that would be acceptable. Okay? in hadith in general, we always, we say sahih. Sahihun dhalik? Sahih, sah. Sah wala la? Hakada. I try to imitate the pronunciation so you can take it from me. Okay? Any other questions? That being said, I expect you guys to have this next week. I'm sorry, Wednesday. Memorized by Wednesday. Okay? It's really only 2 lines. But, inshallah ta'ala, by Wednesday, that's your homework. And your car work, and your walking work, and your laying in bed work, Yeah, that's the only way you're going to get it. You inculcate it and everything. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم.
Jazakallah khairan.